Marcy was a bridesmaid in my sister Jane's wedding. Shortly after graduating from college, Jane met Jim. As one of the groomsmen, I found myself paired with Marcy, and we hit it off from the start. She was a year older than me, but at 19 I didn't consider that a big deal. Although she couldn't be called beautiful, Marcy was pleasant to look at. Her parents kept her on a leash since she still lived at home. She was the oldest in the family. All three of her siblings were boys. Since she spent a lot of her time helping around the house, she did not date in high school, but only met friends at dances and sporting events. While attending a local college, she met my sister. The first couple dates I didn't realize anything, but she told my parents she was going to my sister's house. I thought it was weird to meet her there, but when I finally asked her about it, she said she didn't want to be nervous with her parents about dating me. On the third date, I picked her up at her house. She talked to her parents about being old enough to make her own choices. It wasn't until 2 dates later that we had sex. My father was a truck driver. He used to drive all over the United States, but now he only drove on local roads so he could be home more often in the evenings. When I graduated from high school, he got me a job with the same company. I was mostly a longshoreman, but I also learned to drive and pull trucks up to the dock. I studied for my CDL license so that when I reached adulthood, I could take the test and drive the big trucks. Although I was making good money at the docks, I could do better behind the wheel of trucks. Everything was going well until one day I got a call from Marcy. "Barry, I just went to the doctor and she said I'm pregnant. What are we going to do?" She was crying as she spoke. It was like someone had hit me over the head with a hammer. Marcy was going to have a baby. As far as I was concerned, it was mine. I was so confused. I would be turning 20 in a couple months. I was too young to get married and raise kids. I wanted time to enjoy life and entertain a bunch of women. What was I going to do? Later, I got a call from my sister Jane. "Barry, I just got off the phone with Marcy. What's going on?" "She's pregnant." "I know she's pregnant. Are you going to ask her to marry you? You know she's always loved you and you're the only guy she's ever been with." "My God, is she telling you everything?" "Calm down, Barry. I told you we're best friends. Right now, she doesn't have many people she can talk to about her situation. She knows she has to tell her parents soon, so I'm wondering what you're thinking. Mom and Dad aren't going to be the happiest couple either." She was quiet for a few seconds before she spoke again. "Do you love her, Barry?" "I think I do. I just never thought I'd get married and have a baby so soon in my life. I guess I've been planning on playing the field for a while." You know it's not going to be easy for Marcy either. I'm sure she wasn't planning on having a baby so soon either. I just hope you make the right decision, both for yourself and for Marcy. She's a great catch. "I know, sis, but it's definitely going to change my life." I called Marcy back, and she cried when I told her we were getting married. She really was a wonderful person. I just wasn't mature enough at the time. Her parents weren't very happy with me, but at least they were happy that I was taking responsibility for the pregnancy. I don't think I was ever on their side. They treated me well, but there was never any intimacy between us. Marcy always said that in time they would love me as much as she did. We were married the next month in a small church and had the reception in the community hall. It was very nice, although only our families attended. We didn't have time for a honeymoon, but we spent a nice night in a motel. Monday I had to go back to work and Marcy had classes. Working at the motor pool, I made enough to support us, but not much more. Marcy's parents helped by paying for the rest of her education. She was in her last semester of school and had to get a degree in social work. For a few months, we lived in an apartment. It was nice enough for us, but we knew it wasn't big enough for a family. We were happy and made love the whole time we were together. I think it was our young hormones. I came home from work one evening and found Marcy sitting at the table drinking a glass of tea. She walked over to the refrigerator and opened a beer for me. I wasn't old enough yet, but I worked hard and promised Marcy I wouldn't drink more than 2 a night. "Sit down, Barry. I have something to tell you." "Are you all right? Is the baby okay? What's the matter, Marcy?" I was concerned because I knew she had a doctor's appointment that morning. I'm pregnant. Like I can't see that, I said, smiling at her. We're having twins. What? Are you sure? I wanted to make a happy face for Marcy's sake, but I was scared to death. Yeah, the doctor confirmed 2 heartbeats today. It's a little scary. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle one baby, and now we're going to have 2. It's going to be fine. We went and told her folks. Her dad threw me a nasty look, but her mom said she would do everything she could to help us. Then we went to my parents' house. My dad was a pretty honest man, and it made it easier for me to talk to him. Well, son, things will get better. They always do. Mom and I are here for you and will help you when you need it. Mom walked over and hugged Marcy. She treated her like she was her own daughter. Marcy, I'll help you in any way I can. I don't work, so if you need help looking after the babies, just let me know. About a month before the babies were born, Marcy's parents came to our apartment. They said they had found a nice house not far from where we lived. Since Marcy had already turned 21, they could be our co-borrowers and even give us enough money for a small down payment. To me, it felt like charity on her parents' part, but Marcy was happy. After the kids were born, we would need a bigger place to live. The house payment wasn't much more than our rent, but we knew there would be additional expenses. I thanked Mr. and Mrs. Billings and told them I would do my best to pay them off when I found a better job. He told me not to worry about it because there was nothing he wouldn't do for his little girl. I somehow decided that was a hint at me. We had gotten the house into near-living condition before Marcy had kids. Our parents, my sister, and Marcy's brothers did their part and helped get everything ready. It may not have been much, but Marcy and I were proud of our new home. We had to be careful, but we wanted to christen our home by making love in every room. We had only gotten through 3 rooms when I got a call at work saying Marcy was going to the hospital. Mom picked her up, and I got there as fast as I could. I was really nervous. Our parents and my sister were there waiting. The doctor said it wouldn't be long. 6 hours later, our twin boys showed up. Larry was the first to show up, and 20 minutes later, his brother Jerry showed up. Everyone was saying how cute they were. Honestly, I didn't think babies at birth could be very cute. Sure, it was a miracle, but cute or beautiful they were not. After the nurses cleaned them up, they looked a little better. Both were reddish in color, bald, and had no teeth. Their eyes seemed to be brown, but it was hard to tell. I sat in the big chair and realized I had no idea what was going to happen next in my life. You would think you would be ready, but you weren't. I was now a father of twin boys. After kissing Marcy and taking one more look at my sons, I headed home. I didn't sleep a wink all night. Good thing I took the next day off from work to bring Marcy and the boys home from the hospital. My life and dreams were changed forever. I tried to be a good husband and father, but I certainly didn't plan on a life with kids this early. And I'm sure Marcy felt the same way. I tried to be a good father, helped with the kids as much as I could. I ate shit and cried for them. Marcy was such a good mother. Every time she picked up one of the boys, she smiled. I, on the other hand, still had a hard time telling them apart. As they got older, it got better. At least I could play with them a little. I worked a lot of overtime to help with expenses, so it was a life of work and sleep. However, adults don't tell their kids that while they are growing up. I didn't go out with my friends anymore. I tried to do the right thing, really tried. When I turned 21, I got my CDL license. At a time when there were only openings for long hauls over the road, taking one meant I'd be gone for weeks. Marcy didn't like the idea of me being gone that long, so I didn't accept. Instead, I found a job delivering groceries, usually to homes. I had a route where I stopped every 2 weeks and filled orders. Sometimes customers would order groceries in advance, and I would bring them back the next time. I had a very good route with mostly middle to high income customers. Although I was making good money, I had to work hard. I would start working first thing in the morning, and on some days would not get home until after dark. Marcy and I used to argue that I was never home, but I told her I was doing it for our family. After I changed my schedule and started working late only 3 nights a week, Marcy was much happier. When the kids were about 6 months old, she got a job as an administrative assistant at an elementary school. My mom offered to babysit. We tried to pay her a little, but she refused and said she could never charge us for babysitting her grandchildren. With both of us working late nights, our personal lives took a back seat. We were lucky if we made love twice a week. Then it happened. I stopped at Mrs. Johnson's house with her order. She looked beautiful for a woman in her 40s. "Would you like a glass of lemonade, Barry? It's so hot outside, I thought I'd take a swim in the pool." I couldn't help but stare at her. I put her order on the counter and accepted the drink, just to be there a little longer. "Let's go to the patio. We can have our lemonade there." Anyway, it just so happened that we got into it. I got dressed and was ready to leave. She gave me a check and an order for next time, but told me to leave some time for entertainment. I left her house perplexed as to what I had done. I felt fine, but now I was plagued by guilt. I tried to convince myself that all guys do this, and it was just a one-time thing. When I got home that evening, Marcy was in an irritable mood, one of those moods where she yells at me about anything. Then I felt less resentful about what had happened that day. In the days that followed, I felt pretty good about myself. The older women on my route often flirted with me, and I always complimented them and returned their smiles. When the day came to return to the Johnson house, I began to wonder if she still wanted to play with me. I got my answer when she answered my knock, only in an open robe. "I've been waiting for you. I hope you left some time in your schedule." I walked in and placed her order on the table. As soon as I turned around, we got down to it. "Barry, just so you know, it's just sex. My husband is always busy and I have my own needs. I don't want this to turn into an affair, so it will only happen a few times. I'm just letting you know ahead of time." "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I'm glad we're on the same page. I wouldn't want to ruin my marriage either. You are a very beautiful woman, and I enjoyed being with you." After that, we had fun twice. We joked when I delivered the baby afterward, but nothing else. Her husband was even present a couple of times when I delivered her order. That way, she let me know that our adventures were over. After that, I started doing it with different clients. I never initiated a relationship and made rules for myself. The woman had to be married. Even though some young unmarried daughters looked great, I stayed away from them. What if we fell in love with each other? I didn't seek to destroy my marriage, I just went about my business. Like I said, I was very immature at the time. Most women had a rule, no more than 3 times. I figured I wasn't the only young guy they were having fun with. It was amazing how beautiful these older women were. The ages probably ranged from 30 to 50. It seems strange now, but I really thought this extramarital fun was helping my marriage. I didn't push Marcy as much, and the guilt made me want to help her more. Life was pretty good. My sales were going up, and life was great. I guess I was not only eating cake, but enjoying it. Then one day, it all came crashing down. I got home early and took a shower. Marcy yelled at me that I had just gotten a package and had to sign for it. I told her to do it herself. After getting out of the shower, I got dressed and made my way to the living room. Marcy was sitting on the couch looking at the contents of the package. There were half a dozen pictures of me and another client, Mrs. Handley. Even more pictures showed me with several other women. I had no idea what had just happened. Marcy was crying and screaming obscenities at me, and I was trying to figure out what had happened and where the pictures had come from. Marcy kept screaming and I couldn't think. I grabbed the letter that came with the pictures, went back to the bathroom where it wasn't as noisy, and read the letter. It was a letter from a lawyer. He was representing Mr. Robert Handley in a divorce case. The man was also suing the company I worked for because of my actions, entertaining Mrs. Handley as well as other married clients. The law firm said they wouldn't sue me if I agreed to testify as a witness, confirming that it was all true. What could I say? They had proof in the form of photographs, and I didn't want us to lose everything we had. Thus, I found myself up the creek without a paddle. When I came out of the bathroom, Marcy was at it again. She grabbed the letter and read it. "You goddamn dirty bastard! Get the hell out of my house! I never want to see you again!" She continued shouting obscenities all the way to the car. I was confused. I had no idea where to go. Thinking that my parents could shelter me for the night, I drove there. When I got there, they started yelling at me. Marcy called and said my boss wanted to see me first thing in the morning. The lawyer's letter said they would meet me at our company office. All I knew now was that I was in deep shit. I screwed up big time, I know that. But it's too late. I can't take it all back. I need to stop somewhere for a couple days until I figure out what to do next. Mom, I'm sorry. I really am. I don't have anywhere else to go. Barry, if what Marcy said you did is true, it's unthinkable. You have the nicest wife and the sweetest children a man could ever have, and you gave it all up for what? I know, Mom, but I can't undo what's already been done. At tomorrow's meeting with my boss, I'll probably be fired. All I ask is that you stay here for a couple nights until I find a place of my own. Mom loved Marcy and the boys, and this really shook her up. Barry, you can stay in the basement bedroom until you find a place. Just so you know, I'm on Marcy's side. I love you with all my heart. You are my only son. Mom had tears in her eyes as I went downstairs. The next day, I went in to see Mr. Thompson, the regional manager. The two attorneys who represented Mr. Henderson in the lawsuit against the company were also there. They laid out all of their findings. It turned out that Mr. Henderson had hired a private investigator to spy on his wife. Once he caught us together, he followed me around for weeks. If I'd only had sex with her, the case wouldn't have been as strong. Since he had pictures of me with 3 different women, he concluded that I was the one who was approaching them. That wasn't true because women always made the first moves, but I had no way to prove it. There was no way they could support my story either. Mr. Thompson looked at me with a look that could kill. Is this true? Did you have a relationship with these clients? I wanted to explain, but I had no proof. The lawyers had the pictures, and I remembered them saying they wouldn't prosecute me if I agreed. Apparently, they knew I had nothing, and that I would be worth more as a witness. Yes, Mr. Thompson, that's right. He told the attorneys that he would contact them after consulting with the legal department. He then suspended me until further notice. To make a long story short, Mr. Henderson received a large settlement from the company. I lost my job, but if I had agreed to give them the names of other clients I had relationships with, they wouldn't have sued me either. They knew I had nothing and were interested in keeping things private. They wanted to know the names of the other women in case it came up again. In our state, when you get laid off, you can get unemployment benefits for half a term. I was supposed to get a maximum of 13 weeks, even though it was half of what I was making at work. I had to give most of that money to Marcy for child support and alimony, and I barely had enough to live on. A few days later, I moved out of my parents' house. I found a studio apartment rented by an elderly couple. Their son had moved out, and they had an extra room. It wasn't very big, but I didn't need anything more than a place to sleep. They offered me a rent reduction if I would help around the house. I mowed the lawn and painted a few rooms. They were kind to me, but treated me like a child. They demanded that I follow all sorts of rules. No noise, no coming over with friends after dark, always locking the front door and ringing the bell if I wasn't home. I have to admit that the woman could cook, so at least I was saving money on food. My sister Jane kept telling me about what I did to Marcy. She said I was a stupid asshole and she didn't want to talk to me anymore. I tried to tell her I was sorry, but she wouldn't listen. In the weeks that followed, I continued to look for work. When I tried to apply for any position as a salesman or driver, I had to list my previous job and the reason I was fired. No one was going to hire a guy like me. Mom still babysat for Marcy, and I stopped by a couple times a week to see the boys. I guess they were the only ones who cared about me. I really messed up my life a lot. When Marcy filed for divorce, there was no reason to fight. She got the house and furniture. I got child support and myself based on my paycheck when I was working. When I stopped by the police station to pick up the rest of my belongings, I told Marcy I was sorry. She cried when I left. Chapter 2. I never meant to cause you grief. I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to see you laugh. I only wanted to see you laugh in the purple rain. Purple rain. Purple rain. You've heard of people committing suicide at a young age. Now I realized why. I couldn't sink any lower than I was then. They say, you don't know what you have until you lose it. That's exactly how I felt. God, why did I take everything for granted? If it wasn't for my boys, I'd have driven off the nearest cliff. When I started drinking, the Wilsons asked me to move out. I couldn't blame them. Who needs a drunk in their house? And I found a room in the slums because it was all I could afford. I already had child support debts. I was waiting for them to come after me and throw me in jail. My room was in the back of the bar. Joe would give me free rent as long as I kept it clean and ran some errands for him. He also gave me $20 a day under the table, which allowed me to eat. I have to say something about Marcy. She always took the boys to Mom's house so I could see them. She would tell their mom that I was their father and hoped that someday I would pull myself together. She never belittled me and stopped calling me names. For some unknown reason, she spoke well of me to the boys, even though they were still very young. I often wondered if there was any chance we would ever get back together again. That thought was probably one of the few that got me through it all. One day there was a knock on my back door. I thought it was the police coming after me for non-payment of child support, but it was my father. Barry, can I come in? I need to talk to you about something. Like I said, my father is an honest man. He's not stingy with his words, but he always tells me the truth. Dad, I'm really screwed up and I don't know what to do. I've tried looking for a job, but no one wants to take a guy like me. I was half crying by then. Barry, that's why I'm here. I talked to Roy Skelton at the motor pool and he's willing to offer you a job. Gee, Dad, I'll take it. I'll do whatever he wants me to do. Easy, Barry. Let me tell you. It's a job as a driver on long hauls over the back roads. The pay is good, but you won't be home much. Dad, I don't have a home right now. I just want to bond with Marcy and support my boys. You'll be traveling all over the United States. At best, you'll be able to be home a few days a month. I want you to know it's a very lonely job. I started my driving career the same way and eventually was able to participate in shorter trips. Why does Mr. Skelton do that? He remembers your work on the docks and how well you did. Besides, I'm his oldest driver and I told him I'd vouch for you. Just keep your nose clean and everything should work out. I hugged my father and it felt good to know that he never gave up on me. Barry, I'm serious when I say it's a lonely job. You'll make friends on the road and your best friends will be other truck drivers with the same job. Roy said he'll see you tomorrow. The next day, Mr. Skelton explained the nature of the job to me. I would be using his cab, so he would get 15% of my paycheck. If I ever bought my own car, I would get extra money. Right now, however, I couldn't even afford a pot to piss in. After leaving the depot, I went to let Mom and Dad know I got the job. Jerry and Larry met me at the door. Seeing the smiles on their faces, I realized I was doing this for them, even though I hardly ever saw them. Mom hugged me and told me that since I would only be visiting a few days a month, I could have the room in the basement. That way, whenever I was home, I could see the boys. I hugged her and thanked her. She knew I was trying to get my life together. At the bar, I told Joe about my job and thanked him for helping me when I needed it most. Then he told me that he was friends with my father. Again, I had to thank my dad for supporting me. He not only did it for me, but he made me learn how to help myself. I started work the following week. The first couple weeks were great. I had a new job and got to see a lot of the country. Then it became just like my father said it would be. I was lonely being alone for such a long time. I started making friends with other truckers. Every waitress seemed cute, and I became friends with some. And the highlights of the month were the few days I spent at home. Marcy always made sure the boys were at Mom's to see me, even if it was the weekend. I loved spending time with the little guys. I was able to catch up quickly on child support and alimony. I never once heard a word from Marcy when I fell behind. My mom told me she was just doing the best she could. She never lost faith in me and knew I was trying. The months flew by so fast. It had been over a year since I started my new job. It was hard when I couldn't attend my son's birthdays and holidays because I was constantly on the road. I only saw Marcy a couple times when she came to pick up the boys. She was so beautiful, and I missed her so much. We never said much to each other, but every time I saw her, I realized what a fool I had been. Before I knew it, another year had passed. One day when I was home, my mom told me that Marcy wanted to see me. I was almost excited, but Mom wasn't smiling. I went to Marcy's house. When I knocked on the door, a tall elderly man answered me. "Is Marcy here?" I asked. "You must be Barry. Please come in. I'm Tom Brady." I was confused. Marcy came up to me, and Tom told her he would be in the other room if she needed him. "Who is he?" I asked. "And what's he doing here?" "I'm marrying Tom. He's old enough to be your father. Why are you doing this?" "I know Tom is older than me, 16 years older to be exact, but you have to realize that the boys and I need more stability in our lives. Tom is a wonderful man, and he loves boys. He's not taking my sons away from me. Barry, he has no intention of replacing you. You are and always will be their father. They need a constant male role model. They are starting school and their lives are going to change a lot." "What about you? Do you love him?" "He's helped me a lot over the last 2 years. Yes, I guess in a way I love him. He's kind and considerate and honest, and I enjoy his company. So why am I here? I wanted to tell you myself. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else. I want you to know that he won't replace you as the boys' father. He understands that. When you're home and you want to see the boys, I'll take care of it, and you won't have to pay child support anymore." Tears stood in my eyes as I turned to leave. My heart dropped into my stomach. Marcy saw it too, and there were tears in her eyes too. "Marcy, I've ruined everything. I've lost the only woman I've ever loved. I wish you and Tom all the best." I turned around and walked out of her house. I went back to my mom's house to see my sons. And I learned from my sister that Tom was working as a high school teacher. His daughter was 19 and was going to college. His son was 21 and on his own. Tom's wife had died of cancer 4 years earlier. Although he took it very hard, he did his best to raise his children on his own. Jane also mentioned that 3 years ago he had won Teacher of the Year. The whole community liked him. Jane explained to me that after our divorce, Marcy was a wreck. She loved me, but never fully forgave me. Tom and Marcy became friends and then started dating. Tom's children were happy for their father because he was so sad after losing his wife. When he met Marcy, he seemed happy again. They marveled at the age difference, but trusted their father. Knowing that he would no longer be lonely, they were happy for him. Marcy was selling her house to buy a bigger house so the boys could have their own room. Tom was going to rent out his place. When he died, the house would go to his son and daughter. Everyone was happy with the arrangement. My mom and dad thought Tom was a good guy. The boys liked him and called him Tom. I was the only one they called Dad. For months after the wedding, I would only come home for 2 days and then hit the road again. It was hard for me to realize that Marcy was married to another man. But what was I to expect? A few more years went by. One day the boys told me that I looked fatter. I laughed, but they were right. Sitting on your ass 14 hours a day will do that to you. So I decided to do something about it. I joined a national health club. Every night or any chance I got, I exercised at the club. But not for muscle training, but more for exercise. I started walking instead of sitting still. The next time the boys saw me, they said I looked different. I continued to exercise regularly. It made me feel good about myself, plus I met a lot of women. I met some when I visited certain cities, but I always made sure they were single. Single and divorced women were fine with me. I didn't want to risk my job again. I went to a few prostitutes, but it didn't seem right to me to pay for what other women gave. Besides, I wanted companionship just as much. Having dinner and a movie with a woman was much more enjoyable than getting a quick piece of ass. There were a few women I could have gotten into serious relationships with if it weren't for my job. Not many women wanted to get married when they would only see their spouse a couple times a month. Rose was one of those women. She worked as a waitress in one of the towns I traveled through frequently. Whenever I was in the neighborhood, I made sure to stop by where she worked. She was the one who advised me to join a national health club if I really wanted to keep fit. She was divorced and single-handedly raising her daughter. Her ex-husband was a trucker, and when she found out he cheated on her, they had a big fight. For the sake of her daughter, she took him back. When she found out he cheated on her a second time, she kicked him out. He didn't send child support for their daughter, and she had no idea where he was. After telling me a little about myself, she asked me about my divorce. When I didn't say anything, she assumed it was my fault. I ended up telling her the truth. She was such a wonderful woman, pretty, bright, and usually happy. Whenever I happened to spend the night near her house, I would spend time with her. We'd go out to dinner or to entertainment events. We became good friends, and yes, they were friends with benefits. Other than my ex-wife Marcy, Rose was the only woman I cared about. It wasn't love, but we had a very close friendship. We both knew it wouldn't last forever. I saw her once or twice a month. Being with her made me realize how much I missed Marcy. For some reason, I couldn't let her go. One night we had too much to drink, and I found myself making passionate love to Rose. After that, out of the blue, I asked her to marry me. Even under the influence of alcohol, I realized it was out of concern for her and because of the climax I had just experienced. She looked up at me, kissed me, and smiled. "Barry, I love you as a good friend, just as you love me. We both know that marriage between us is impossible. And I could never marry a man who spends most of his life traveling. You and I are great friends and should remain so. Besides, you're still in love with your ex-wife. You called me Marcy 3 times. I feel sorry for you, but you should try to forget her. She's no longer a part of your life." I knew Rose was right. The problem was how to get rid of the memories? It was about 2 years later when Rose told me she had found someone. I was happy for her, but I knew I would miss her. She deserved a good life with a good man, and I wished her the best. The next time I was in town, I walked into a restaurant, but Rose was gone. Life went on, and I watched my boys grow up without me. I did the best I could with them, but life passed me by. They were great boys. Marcy and Tom taught them well. I took them fishing, and they knew how to bait their own hooks. Tom taught them. Even when we went to a game, they knew all the rules because Tom took the time to explain everything to them. Tom did all the things I was supposed to do. I just wasn't enough for them. Strangely enough, they didn't hate me for it. They always greeted me by saying, "Dad, we're so happy to see you." I had been on the road for over 8 years. Rose was a part of my past. I remember her telling me to take care of my family. She knew I loved my sons. One day I came into the office to talk to Roy Skelton, my boss and owner of the company. "What can I do for you, Barry?" he asked. "Mr. Skelton, my father mentioned that Floyd Booth is retiring. I was wondering if I could take over his routes." "Well, I don't see why not. The only problem is that you'd have to have your own cab for that route. Mine are only used for long-distance transportation." "Sir, I talked to Floyd, and he offered to sell me his car. I have enough money for a large down payment, and he said he would accept payment for the balance." "Barry, I want to say that you have been a valued employee of our company. A better driver I could not have wished for. The route is up to you. You do know that it pays less than long hauls, don't you?" "Yes, sir, I know, but this way I can spend more time with my family." "Thank you, Mr. Skelton. I really appreciate it." "You've earned it, Barry. Congratulations." I walked out of his office a happy man. Maybe my life would be a little more normal now. I told Mom and Dad about getting the new route. Of course, Dad already knew about it. And I wouldn't be home more than 2 nights a week, so I told Mom I would find an apartment close to their house. It was time to get out of her basement, even if I was only there a few days a month. I called Marcy and asked if she could come over to Mom's house because I had something I needed to discuss with her. She came over after school and brought the boys with her. I was always happy to see them. Since they were a little older and in school, Mom didn't see them as much either. Damn, she looked as beautiful as ever. I felt my heart jump slightly, but I tried to act normal. "Barry, you look good," she smiled. "I keep going to the fitness club to keep myself in shape. Sitting on my ass for up to 14 hours a day has put on extra pounds. I must say you look as beautiful as ever." I noticed she looked a little embarrassed, so I continued to explain the reason I wanted to see her. "Marcy, I have an itinerary where I will be away from home no more than 2 days a week. I wanted to see if I had the opportunity to see the boys more often and be a bigger part of their lives." "I'm in favor of the boys seeing you more often." "What did you mean by that?" "You know they're in school and playing sports. They have pretty busy schedules." "I don't want to interfere with their studies. Maybe you wouldn't mind attending their games and other activities? Maybe I'll let them come over on the weekends if they want to." "Are you still going to live here? The boys come here all the time to visit your mom and dad." "No, I'm considering several apartments. It's time to get our own place. I'll let you know when I find one. I don't want to interfere with your life with Tom, but I do want to see the boys more often." "I don't see a problem here, Barry. They are your sons, and you have every right to see them. I'll be giving you copies of all their school records. Your mom already got one. I'm sure it will all work out. I'm so glad you want to be more involved in the boys' lives." "They love you very much," Marcy said, bestowing a smile on me. I found a nice 2-bedroom apartment about a mile from Mom's house. It even had a pool, which I knew the boys would love to use when they came to visit. Since my sister Jane had spoken to me again, I asked her if she would help me pick out furniture. "Are you seeing anyone in particular, Barry?" she asked one afternoon. "Why, do you have any available friends?" "Don't even think about it." She laughed, knowing she had introduced me to Marcy. I don't know if she could tell I still had feelings for Marcy. I felt a little out of place when I went to the boys' first baseball game. When I got there, I saw Marcy, Jane, Marcy's parents, and my mom and dad sitting together on the lounge chairs. That's when I realized that Tom was the coach. I had forgotten the boys had talked about it. And I couldn't sit with the group because I felt I would be out of place, so I sat on the bleachers. Marcy looked up and seemed surprised to see me. She must have told the others because they all looked at me. Then I saw my sons. I could make out the last name Hopkins on the back of their shirts. The only problem was that I didn't know which one was which. They looked a lot alike anyway. No. 8 kicked a long ball. "Run, Larry or Jerry, whoever you are!" I shouted impulsively. It felt so good to cheer for my son. Some people laughed, but I didn't care. The woman next to me said, "Larry is number 8 and Jerry is number 9. It's pretty hard to tell them apart." "Thanks, but I think the reason for the laughter is because they're my sons. I'm Barry Hopkins, and thank you for the information." While we were talking, Larry was heading for 3rd position. He slid safely onto the base to the shouts of all the fans. The woman next to me introduced herself as Elaine Brady. Her son was also on the team. The next pitcher up was Jerry. I shouted, "Come on, Jerry, bring your brother home, just keep your eye on the ball." I couldn't help myself. It was the first time I'd ever watched my boys play ball. I must have yelled pretty loud, because when Jerry came to the plate, he looked up at the bleachers and smiled at me. I was nervous as hell, praying he would hit. On the 3rd pitch, he fielded the ball between 1st and 2nd base, making a single. When Larry walked in, I cheered along with everyone else. Jerry grinned at me from 1st base. After the game, which we won, I walked to the fence and congratulated the boys. "We're just glad you came to watch us, Dad," Jerry said. Talk about something that brings tears to my eyes. From then on, I participated in every game I could. I saw the boys often, and they enjoyed using the pool. I always tried not to interfere with any of Marcy's plans. I signed up for the local health club to keep myself in shape. It was the only physical activity I got. I dated several women, and they all seemed nice. My problem was that I tended to compare them to Marcy. I knew it was wrong, but that's the way my mind worked. As Rose had told me years ago, I had to let her go and move on. I did, but the memories still lingered, especially since I saw her all the time. I was jealous when I saw her with Tom, mostly because it should have been me, but I was too stupid and immature. I was never home on vacation. One day when Marcy stopped by Mom and Dad's house, I brought it up with her. Yeah, how can we make arrangements so I can see the boys during the vacations? I have an idea, if you don't mind. The boys and Tom and I have always celebrated Thanksgiving with my mom and dad. So I thought the boys would be with us on Thursday and Friday, and on Saturday and Sunday they could be with you and your parents, Marcy explained. That will work out beautifully. I'll make a big dinner on Saturday. Marcy, do you and Tom want to come too? My mom asked. Marcy and Tom had spent the day with them in the past, but I had never even thought about Tom being with them. I'll talk to Tom and get back to you. Thanks for the invitation, Marcy said. Hell, no wonder Mom and Dad still loved her. She was like a second daughter to them. Marcy, just so you know, I don't mind. I think it would be great if we all got together for Thanksgiving. And what do you suggest for Christmas? I know my presence here makes it hard for everyone. No, you're wrong. The boys are so happy to be with their father. They take great care of Tom, but you're their father whether you like it or not, Marcy said with a smile. Usually on Christmas Eve, we go to my parents' house. Christmas morning, we exchange gifts at our house. Your mom always invited us to have dinner with them. I thought maybe we could keep doing that. My mom said. That's fine with me. I love cooking for everyone, and this year Barry will be here too. So we'll give the boys their presents when you come over for dinner? I asked Marcy. Yes, they always open them before they eat. They're always so excited. Do you have any problems with these offerings? As for New Year's Eve, your mom always watches them when Tom and I go out. You can pick them up that night unless you have other plans. I think that's fine. I'll talk to Mom about New Year's Eve. I didn't want Marcy to know I didn't have any plans yet. I thought maybe I'd like to go out if for no other reason than her. Hell, the kid in me still was. I talked to my sister Jane and asked her to go Christmas shopping with me to get something for Mom, Dad, and the boys. Jane, would it be wrong to buy Marcy something nice? It wouldn't, Barry. She's married, and I don't think Tom would approve. Besides, it would make Marcy worry. What you can and should do is get her something nice from the boys. Maybe let them pick it out themselves. I'll tell you that Marcy will get you something from the boys, like she does every year. I got a list from Marcy of things the boys wanted. Jane and I picked them out, as well as a couple things for Mom and Dad. I also bought a gift for Jane's children. Her 2 daughters were 2 years younger than my boys. We did not exchange gifts with the adults. They decided it was too expensive. Later, I took the boys to the store to look for something for their mom. I realized why Marcy was picking out gifts for all the boys. They were crazy. They were looking at toys and expensive electronics that Marcy could probably care less about. Eventually, I convinced them to buy something useful that their mom could wear. We walked into Victoria's Secret, and the boys couldn't believe the clothes there. I had to tell them to calm down. I realized they were my boys and told them we needed to talk. Dad, we already talked to Tom. He told us about how we need to treat girls with respect. Someday when we are older, we will know when we meet the right girl, Jerry said. This is where I missed again. Tom was around them, and I wasn't. It gave me a kind of sad feeling. Well, boys, be sure to heed Tom's warnings. Someday you'll meet the right girl, and then you can come here and find something for her. I pictured Marcy in almost everything in the store, but I knew it wouldn't go to waste. I had a little plan and just bought a couple of Victoria's Secret boxes. What are those boxes for, Dad? Larry asked. Oh, you'll see now. We're going to have a little fun wrapping your mom's presents in them. We went into another women's clothing store that Marcy liked. The boys wanted to buy her pajamas and slippers. I didn't object, and they went and picked them out. Of course, that was what 13-year-old boys pick out. One of the slippers they picked out was a big fluffy one with a hippo head on it. I couldn't keep from laughing, but decided to let the boys pick out their own gifts. Larry chose a pair of slip-ons. We walked over to the cosmetics counter and they picked out Marcy's favorite perfume. I took a small bottle since it was from the boys. Thanksgiving went well, but I felt a little out of sorts. It was hard to see Marcy with Tom, but I think it was a little hard on her too. Christmas morning came and I was excited. For the first time in 9 years I was home and I was going to spend the day with my family. Mom, Dad, and I got up early and had a hearty breakfast. We knew it would be quite a while before Marcy and the others arrived. We opened some presents for each other that were under the Christmas tree. We also opened gifts from Jane and Marcy's family. The only gifts left under the tree were the boys' gifts and the ones they bought Marcy. Everyone arrived and I shook Tom's hand. I couldn't believe Marcy had hugged me. "Merry Christmas, Barry," she said. I knew I shouldn't understand any of this, but there was a sense of forgiveness in those words. Maybe I just wanted to believe it. The boys were ready to open their presents. Marcy said they had been on edge all morning. Jane's family showed up and the kids hugged me and thanked me for the gifts. I bought each girl another gift so they would have something to open with the boys. All the kids quickly opened their presents, thanking me for everything. I opened mine, and it turned out that the boys had bought me 2 pairs of jeans for work and a couple shirts. "Thanks, boys. I'll always need them." "Mom picked out the jeans and we picked out the shirts," Jerry said. It wasn't surprising since one t-shirt had Transformers on it and the other had Spider-Man on it. They brought a smile to my face. The boys handed Marcy their gifts. When she saw the Victoria's Secret box, a concerned expression appeared on her face. Jane looked up as well. Tom was completely stone-faced. "Open it, Mom," Larry said. When she opened it and saw the pajamas the boys had bought her, she looked at me. But I tried to look as innocent as possible. She opened another box, also from Victoria's Secret, and looked at me again. Opening it a little faster, she laughed when she saw the hippo slippers. The second pair matched her pajamas, she told the boys. She then opened her perfume, thanking the boys for the wonderful gifts. I guessed from her look that she knew the perfume was from me. At dinner, everyone asked the boys why they had come to Victoria's Secret. They told me that they were looking for pajamas for Marcy, but couldn't find anything, so they just bought pretty boxes to wrap her gifts in. That made everyone laugh. It was so great to see Marcy so happy. New Year's Eve came and Elaine asked me if I wanted to go with a couple of her friends to a party. I thought it would be fun, so I agreed. Mom said the boys could stay with her. I had gone on a few dates with Elaine before, and it always ended well. I figured it would be a good way to celebrate New Year's Eve. Jack and Cindy were longtime friends of Elaine's. At one point, I looked over and saw Tom and Marcy sitting with Jane and Jim. Seeing them took away the joy of the evening. We left after midnight and went to another party. I felt more relaxed since Marcy wasn't there. Elaine and Cindy were a lot of fun, and we all drank more than we should have. No one had to be persuaded, and we got a room for 4. Later, I couldn't believe I was sharing a wife with a man. When I drove Elaine home the next morning, I told her I had a great time, but I didn't like wife swapping. She informed me that Jack and Cindy were married, and she was not. "Barry, you're a good guy. Your problem is that you're still in love with your ex. Most guys wish they were in your shoes last night. You need to get over her and enjoy life to the fullest." I knew she was right, but I liked seeing my boys. Even around Marcy, I was happy. I didn't see Elaine again after that night, though I'll never forget that New Year's Eve night. Chapter 3. Several months passed, and one evening I received a phone call from Marcy. Her voice was upset. Marcy, what's the matter? Snippet! Can you take the boys for the night and make sure they get to school in the morning? I need to take Tom to the trauma center. Sure, no problem. Do you know what's wrong with Tom? He's been having stomach problems lately. Right now, he says he's in a lot of pain. I know Tom, and if he's decided to go to the hospital, it means he's in pain. I'll stop by and pick up the boys. I hope Tom will be okay. He's a really good guy. It was hard for me to say those words, but it was the truth. He was the kind of guy who seemed to have everything in order. Everyone loved him, but the only problem was that he had Marcy. After sending the boys off to school the next day, Marcy called to tell me that Tom had been accepted for testing. I told her not to worry, that I would take care of the boys, and she could stay with Tom. That night, the boys stayed with my mom because I had to drive for the night. When I got back, my mom told me that Tom had pancreatic cancer. Because of the advanced stage, he had 2 months to live. Surgery was not possible, so he was discharged with a few medications. I stopped by to see him and Marcy. It was so strange, because upon looking at him, he seemed to be perfectly fine. But as he explained, his insides weren't fine. Have you thought about trying to fight it? I asked. Barry, there's about a 5% chance that I'll survive all the surgeries. I don't want to put Marcy and the boys through that kind of pain. I care about them too much. Besides, the doctors don't think I can even survive all the surgeries. The cancer has spread to other organs. On the drive home, I thought about how unfair it was that someone like Tom dies early while someone like me continues to live. A month later, I got a call from Marcy saying she was taking him to the hospital. I picked up the boys and drove them to my house. The next day, we went to visit Tom in the hospital. On the way to the hospital, the boys were crying. I'm sorry, Dad, but Tom was like a second father to us, Jerry said. I understand the boys. It's hard to understand why God takes people like Tom so early in life. I guess we'll never know why. Just be glad that Tom will be with God and won't suffer anymore. You boys are lucky to have had such a good man like Tom in your lives. He was a special man and loved you boys, and your mom very much. It is normal to cry when you lose someone close to you. There is nothing unmasculine about showing your emotions. We went in to see Tom and the boys hugged him. They told him how precious he was to them and that they would miss him. He tried to reassure them by reminding them to treasure the memories they had. The boys sat with their mom in the waiting room after Tom asked permission to meet with me alone. Barry, I've known for a long time that you still loved Marcy. I could just feel it. I want to thank you for being so thoughtful about our marriage. You must have been uncomfortable at times, but you handled it like a gentleman. I want you to look after Marcy and the boys. Our sons are wonderful children. You couldn't wish for better boys. I'm so proud of them. As for Marcy, she still has feelings for you. There are some things we just know. Please give her some time and take care of her. As I left the room, I had tears in my eyes. I wondered again why God takes people like him and leaves people like me. Maybe he wanted another angel by his side. Tom passed away the next day. For the first few months after the funeral, Marcy was busy with probate, so we didn't see each other much. The boys came to visit me every few days. Jane told me that she was helping Marcy pack Tom's personal belongings. Tom had a will, and he took care of everything. Jane told me that he left his old house and furniture to his adult children. Marcy got the insurance money, and everything they owned jointly went to her. She and Jane collected all of Tom's personal belongings and let his children take whatever they wanted from their father's belongings. She left some of his baseball memorabilia for Larry and Jerry, since he had promised it to them. I saw Marcy a couple of times at Mom's house, but never stayed long enough to talk to her alone. She was busy, but I hoped her situation would improve soon. It was about a month later when Mom invited everyone over for a barbecue. Marcy said she would make every effort to come. On the day of the barbecue, Jane showed up with Larry and Jerry, but without Marcy. "Where's your mom?" I asked the boys. "She was going to come, but she ran into some trouble. She'll try to come later if she gets everything straightened out," said Jerry. What kind of trouble, Jerry? The garbage disposal stopped working and the sink is full of dirt. She's been busy enough as it is, and then there's this garbage disposal problem. It's something Tom used to take care of. I looked at my dad. Where do you keep your toolbox of plumbing and electrical tools? On the workbench in the garage, Dad answered. I'd like to borrow it if that's okay. Dad knew I was going to help Marcy. Do you need me to come with you? Dad asked. No, thanks, Dad. I think I can manage. I told Mom I'd be back just in time for the reception, and I went to the garage to get some tools. A few minutes later, I was at Marcy's house. Barry, what are you doing here? She asked, answering my knock. I heard you needed a repairman and I wasn't busy, so take me to the garbage disposal. The boys were right. The sink was full of garbage and the trash chute wasn't working. I pushed the dump button and it worked, but nothing went down the drain. I was busy getting all the stuff out from under the sink. Barry, you don't need to do that. I was going to call a plumber. Marcy, you need help and I know what I'm doing. Besides, we need to be at the party in 2 hours. I smiled at her and asked for a bucket. Pulling the siphon out of the garbage disposal, I confirmed my hunch. There were eggshells and potato peels stuck in the siphon. As soon as I pulled it out, all the trash went into the bucket. I put the pipes back together and told her to try out the garbage disposal. When it was working, I gathered my tools and turned to her. So, the boys said your toilet is dripping all the time. Is that true? Yes, but you don't need to. Marcy, I'm here to help. Please let me try. She smiled and nodded. While she put things away under the kitchen sink, I checked the toilet. Seeing that it needed a new part, I headed to the hardware store. It took me longer to buy the part than it did to repair the toilet. Okay, what else do you need to do before we go to the party? The house is a mess. I can't leave it like this, Marcy said. Go ahead and do what you need to do. I'll fill the dishwasher and mop the kitchen floor. She looked at me as I reached for the dishes. I guess she decided it was a waste of time to argue with me, so she went into the family room and started vacuuming. What else do you want to do? I asked, after I finished mopping the floor. I need to take out those boxes of Tom's stuff. Some I want to put in the attic and take the rest to the Salvation Army. His kids took everything they wanted and I don't need the rest of the clothes. The stuff that goes in the attic, I'll try to sell at a garage sale. I took the heavy boxes to the garage and put the clothes for the Salvation Army in my truck to drive. While I was doing that, the phone rang. Yeah, we'll be there in 15 minutes. Yeah, he fixed it. I think he did too. Okay, I'll see you in a little while, Marcy said. That was Jane. She wanted to know if I was coming to the party. I told her we'd be there soon. What did she say that made you say, I think so too? I asked Marcy. Right. She thinks you're a really caring person and you've changed. Marcy, if you need anything, please call me. I mean it. Now come on. We have to go to the Salvation Army and then to the party. I'm starving already. We made our stop first and then headed over to my mom's. The food was ready and they were waiting for us. While we ate, I talked to the boys. Tomorrow you two have to carry some heavy boxes up to the attic for your mom. Also, clean your bedrooms every morning and make your beds. You boys need to help your mom more now. She's going through a rough time. Oh, by the way, the grass is getting a little taller. I'm going to let you boys decide who's going to mow and who's going to trim. Everyone was a little surprised that I spoke up. After all, I had never interfered in the way Marcy raised the children before. Even the boys looked surprised. But Marcy didn't utter a word. Red, do you two want to go to the baseball game next weekend? I got 4 tickets from work and thought you guys might be interested in going, I told the boys. That would be great. We haven't been to a game since last year when Tom took us, Larry said. It's okay to talk about him, Larry. He was a wonderful man, and you should keep the memories of him close to your heart, I said. Dad, what are you going to do with the extra ticket, Dad? Jerry asked. I don't know. Maybe you have a friend you'd like to take with you? What about Mom? She always went when Tom took us along, replied Jerry. I looked at Marcy. Do you like baseball? Would you like to go with me and the boys next Saturday? Yes, I love going to games, but I have so much to do, she said. Jane said, Marcy, you need to go out. I think you should go out and have fun. Anything you need to do can wait. I was surprised that Jane said Marcy should come with me. Maybe I was the better person. We had a great time at the game. As the boys were telling me what they knew about the players, I thought again that Tom must have taught them a lot. Just sitting next to Marcy and seeing her smile made me happy. I felt like we were a family again. After the game, we stopped by the pizza place. While we were waiting for our order, Larry tapped me on the shoulder. Dad, can we go to an amusement park this year? That's up to your mom, but I don't mind, I replied. Marcy gave me a look that said, You want me to be the bad guy, which made me smirk. I don't. Why don't I discuss it with Aunt Jane and maybe she can bring the girls too? The pizza arrived and the boys started discussing the game again. I really enjoyed spending time with them. All right, Barry, I'll call you back about the amusement park after I call Jane, Marcy said when I brought them home. Sounds good to me. I waved to the boys and left with a wide smile on my face. I couldn't believe it when Jane called me the next week. Barry, what are your plans for Marcy? I can see that you still care for her, but what do you expect from her? Sis, I love her and I always have. I screwed up big time and I know it. I just live for one day and hope I can get her back. I never interfered in her marriage to Tom. Now she is a widow and I will do anything to get her back. I'll never hurt her again. She called about the park and wanted my opinion. I told her I thought it would be fun. Jim wants to go too. Just promise me you won't pressure her. She's very vulnerable right now, and she could use another friend. Sis, I want to be that friend for both her and the boys. The park was fun. We let the kids go ahead, and the boys looked after their cousins. All the adults rode the rides together. Marcy and I held hands a few times, although I didn't push her in any way. Over the next month, I saw her and the boys more often. One afternoon when I dropped the boys off, I decided to take a chance. Would you go on a date with just me? Barry, what do you expect me to do? Marcy, I'm in love with you, and always have been. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes, and I promise never to hurt you again. Okay, we can watch a movie and maybe have dinner. Don't rush me. I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing by seeing you alone. Thanks, I said, before walking away. The next weekend, we went to the movies. We were holding hands, and I spilled nacho cheese sauce all over my pants. Marcy started laughing. What's so funny? I asked. Remember our first date when you spilled cheese sauce on your pants? It's happening again now. I need to change if you still want to go out to dinner. You can wait in the car if you want. I'm not afraid of you. I'm a big girl, she said, and laughed. Back at my apartment, I went to change my pants. No sooner had I taken a step than I saw Marcy looking at me. I love you too, Barry. I want to make love to you. I've wanted to for a long time. And so we got down to it. I couldn't believe I was with the woman I loved. It felt so good. Do you still want to go to dinner? I asked, not realizing what she was thinking. Why don't we stay here, take a nap, and have a repeat performance? Thus began our acquaintance. We went out at least every weekend, sometimes with the boys and sometimes on our own. A few times we went out to dinner with Jane and Jim. One day I stopped by her house and she said her parents wanted to see me. I was scared to death, even though I was a man. They were people who never liked me, and I cheated on their daughter. As the boys were playing outside, her father looked at me and began to explain why I had come. Barry, I know you thought we never cared for you, but that's not true. We liked you, but we thought you were too young to get married. Marcy's pregnancy was as much her fault as it was yours. Now that you're dating again, she wanted us to know. Barry, we're good friends with your parents, and we know you've really tried to get your life together. You don't need our approval to date Marcy, but you have it. Just think twice about the decisions you make. And most importantly, we don't want Marcy to get hurt again. Mr. and Mrs. Billings, I've grown up and realized my mistakes. I have no intention of repeating them. Know that I love Marcy and our sons. They are my life. Marcy and I are just living the same day. We understand that and appreciate your honesty. After our conversation, I stayed for dinner. I felt like Marcy and I were meeting for the first time, only older. And now I had her parents' permission. Since it was open, we were together more often. But I never stayed overnight at her house. We wanted the boys to know that we were working on our relationship, but not to the point yet. She told me one night that people at work were happy to see her back to normal after Tom's death. Only a few people knew she was dating her ex-husband. But some felt she shouldn't be dating someone so soon. Barry, I have to tell you about Tom and me. Please don't interrupt. I have to tell you about it if we are to continue. When you cheated on me, I hated you. I can't tell you how much I wished you would just die. After the divorce, my feelings changed. You see, I hated what you did to our family, but deep down I still loved you. It was tearing me apart. That's when I met Tom. He was handsome, strong, older, and wiser. He told me to stop carrying around all this hate. It doesn't do me any good, and life is too short to hate people. None of what she had said so far was news to me. I had really hurt her when I cheated on her. More than that, I hurt what we had as a family. We became friends. He told me about his family and about his wife's death. After we started spending more time together, we became good friends. Years ago, you asked me if I loved him. I cared for him a lot at the time, but I didn't know if it was love. He helped me through some very difficult times. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes. He was a wonderful husband, treating me and the boys well. We got along great and rarely quarreled. When you returned, he asked me if I had feelings for you. I told him the truth and answered that I did. But I made sure he knew that I would never jeopardize my marriage to him. He understood and trusted me completely. If you were to ask me today if I love him, the answer would be in the affirmative. I don't know how to explain it, but it was different from the love I had for you. Please understand that if we are together, there may be times when I will compare you to him or even call you Tom. I still have doubts about our relationship, but I want to try. I just want you to know that I loved Tom, and I love you. Marcy, I love you, and we'll work it out as we go along. I have no intention of letting you go again, I said when she was done. Thanksgiving came sooner than we realized. Mom asked Marcy and I to invite her parents over for dinner. The Billings agreed, and that was the plan of action. I decided to take it one step further and ask Marcy to marry me again. I decided we were ready, and I wanted the whole family to know how I felt. Jane's boys and girls sat at a separate table, and I settled down next to Marcy. When it was time to eat, Dad asked me if I would say a prayer. Everyone was surprised, including Marcy, but Daddy and I had agreed on it beforehand. I stood up and began to say the prayer as soon as everyone bowed their heads. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day of thanksgiving and forgiveness. Lord, we thank you for the family and friends who have gathered here to share this wonderful meal together. Lord, I especially want to thank you for Marcy and my sons who mean the world to me. I hope this is the first of many Thanksgivings we will spend together. And I also want to ask Marcy to be my wife again, to have and keep her until death do us part. Amen. I turned to Marcy and got down on one knee. Then I opened her ring, a gift from years ago. Marcy, will you marry me? Barry, why are you asking me now? My God, that's my engagement ring that I threw to you. Today, all these years I'd been saving them for just such an occasion. Today, they sparkled like they had long ago. Marcy, I love you, and I know you love me. We have 2 wonderful sons and wonderful families that support us. I want to be married before Christmas morning so I can be there to see my boys and my wife opening presents. I promise I've grown up, and I'll be the best husband I can be if you say yes. Marcy looked around at all the faces around her. No one said a word. Even the boys were silent. I was still on one knee. When she didn't say anything else, I hoped I hadn't been too hasty. She folded her hands and recited a prayer. When she finished, there were tears in her eyes. Yes, Barry, I will marry you. Everyone at the table spoke at once. I leaned over to kiss her before slipping the wedding ring on her finger. When are you getting married? Will we be able to come? Larry asked. Probably in a couple weeks. We'll have some time to make plans. And yes, you both can be there, replied Marcy. Are we only having one Christmas this year? Asked Jerry. Marcy told him that wouldn't change much. We would still go to Grandma Billings on Christmas Eve, open presents at home on Christmas morning, and go to Grandma Hopkins for dinner in the evening. Daddy, will you take us shopping at that store again so we can get Mom something nice? She was very surprised last year and all she got was a nice box. Jerry, I'll tell you what. Since you like the store so much, you, Larry, and I can go to Victoria's Secret again this year, and I'll find something for your mom for Christmas. Marcy looked at me with her mouth open, and everyone around her laughed. This year, I was as excited about Christmas as the kids were. My family was together again, and that was what mattered. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, There are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.